What's going on, guys? Welcome to the first ever episode of Make Every Death Count. The show is going to be devoted to some of the stories that we've experienced across conventions and meeting different horror icons, and just some of the crazy shit that happens when you become part of this horror family and community. Now, we've been talking about doing this series for a long time, and I really wanted to kick it off with the bang, and one of the most unique stories I have that's very personal to me is exactly how I met Kane Hodder. Now, many of you have heard this story, but you've heard a very broken down and simplistic version of it. Now, today I'm going to dive into a very detailed and long version of it that hopefully isn't too boring and will entertain you along the way. But before I do that, we need to make sure there's some clear context here on just how big of a fan I was of Kane and the Friday the 13th franchise before this ever happened. First of all, when I was 4 years old is when I became a legitimate fan of Friday the 13th. Maybe 3, but 4 is what I distinctly recall, as I was starting to get horror memorabilia for like birthday gifts. Yeah, at 4 years old, I was getting horror collectibles as birthday gifts. In fact, for my 4th birthday, I got one of those Mezco, like Spencer, Scream, and Freddy dolls that are kind of rare now, so that's pretty unique. Still have those to this day with their certificate of authenticity. In terms of Kane, I probably knew who Kane was right about the same age. I was probably about 4 or 5. In fact, I was such a big fan of Kane at that young of an age. I was 7 years old when Freddy vs. Jason came out. In 2003, I was 7 years old, which, yes, I know I'm young, I'm 22. If you're going to be one of those that say I can't be a true horror fan because I'm so young, get out of here. That's bullshit. I know a lot of shit about horror films. I've done this my whole fucking life. I was 7 years old when Freddy vs. Jason came out, okay? And even at 7 years old, I wrote a letter to New Line Cinema complaining and just ripping into them in the most cute child way I possibly could about how he got recasted, and how Ken Kersinger took his spot in Freddy vs. Jason, just how that was ridiculous. It was a shot in the face of fans. I wrote this really cheesy, dumb letter, which I doubt my mom ever sent to New Line, but I wrote it. It was stern, it was aggressive, okay? So I think that's just important to know, just how big of a fan I was of Kane, even at that young of an age, well before any of this happened. But now let's actually go into the story. High school, senior year. I'm not sure what I want to do. What I do know is that I want to stick with film in some sort of way, but I wanted to have a strong academic place to go. Because I knew NFL wasn't realistic, but I still wanted to play. I thought it'd be fun. So I looked small. Despite having some minor offers to bigger schools, I knew that wasn't realistic, so I went small and wanted to focus on my academics. With that, one of the places that recruited me was a place called Beloit College in Beloit, Wisconsin. And it was the first place I ever visited, and ever since I visited, that was it. I wanted to go there. Small campus, small residential side. It felt like my high school experience. Moved on to college with just a little bit more people. I liked that. So I made the decision to go there. Completely random. Had zero idea who went there. Didn't know anybody on campus. Nobody from my high school went there. I just thought it'd be a fun place, and they offered me a pretty good deal in terms of football. So probably 2 to 3 months into my collegiate football career, so you may say, I was dealing with stingers, where my whole left arm would go completely numb, and my index and my middle finger I couldn't really use them. They would just be gone, and it would cause severe pain up in my shoulder. And I dealt with the same type of issue in high school, and that's why I figured then it was just stingers. But the fact that it came back so quickly into my collegiate football, that I should get it checked out. So I went and talked to my trainer, and he knew simply with my 2 fingers going numb that it could be something more serious and could be something affecting my C7 and my spine. So I had to go to the hospital. Since I was my freshman year, I did not have a car. My trainer had to take me, and from where I had to go to get a proper MRI was roughly a 30-minute drive. We're on the way there, small talk is starting, and he asked me what I want to do. Instantly, of course, horror films come up, how much I'm obsessed with horror films, how I want to make them someday, and even then, Slash and Cast was so small, nobody knew who we were. It was just, I just kind of sort of threw that in there. And then he said this: wow, I think that there's somebody on campus that is related to somebody that works in the horror industry. And just that alone, I was like, well, that's really intriguing. I would love to hear that. Maybe they have connections, maybe they can help me and to meet people that would help me in this career path, because it's a tough one to get into. And I was like, well, do you know who it is? Do you have any idea what their name is? I might know them if they're truly a name in this industry. He's like, I'm not sure. I think he played one of the killers, one of the class killers. That's when you got my attention. It's like, well, if he played one of the killers, I feel like I know him. Listen, my horror knowledge, it's up there. So if you mean to tell me that somebody's related to a horror icon, you think I'd have known, right? You think I would have figured that out by now. I was like, well, what horror icon are you thinking? It's like, I think he might have been in the Halloween films. It might have been that killer. It's like, okay, so it's a Michael. It's maybe we're looking at Nick Castle's kid, something like that. You know, maybe someone like George Wilbur. It could have been a stuntman. Anyone. I'm starting to name off all these people, all these Michael Myers characters, and he's like, none of those sound right. Maybe I think he was a Jason. I'm like, Jason, but now we're talking real big. I mean, these are some iconic actors. And again, I'm going back, and I'm the last one I'm thinking is Kane Hodder. The last one I'm thinking is Kane Hodder. Because it's like, there's no way. I'd have known. Like, out of all those people, Kane's the one I've looked up to the most, and who I followed the most, and I knew who his kids were. I knew his name simply because I read his book. So I just didn't think it'd be him, right? Didn't think it'd be him. And I'm still listening through these. He's like, no, I'm telling you, he's one of the bigger ones. I think he was known for playing the character more than once. And I'm like, what? Are you talking about Kane Hodder? And instantly his face like, yes, Kane Hodder. His son plays goalie for our lacrosse team. Really? Wow. I didn't even know how to respond. The smile on my face, it was like locked there. And he knew, instantly my trainer knew. He's like, man, I shouldn't have told you, because now you're going to go stalk that kid. And I didn't. Alright, I tried to be as mature as I possibly could. But before this, I never met anybody in the industry. I've never been to any conventions, despite how much I wanted to. I just never had the opportunity. And, you know, I grew up in a small town, and it just wasn't a thing here. Nobody watches horror films where I'm from. So he said that. He said that it was Kane Hodder and his son, Jace, who is conveniently named Jace because of Jason, goes to college at Beloit. So I had to find a way to make a connection. And I didn't know how to do that without being that fucking creepy kid that's stalking him. I didn't want to be that guy. But I knew I kind of had to. I knew I kind of had to do that. First thing, I made a huge mistake. Instead of ever trying to introduce myself or find him on campus in some oddball way, I sent him a friend request on Facebook. Shouldn't have done that. I knew that was a bad idea. I don't know what I was thinking. Of course, that kid's gotten a lot of friend requests in the past. I mean, he's Hodder. It's very clear. He looks a lot like his dad as well. Made that mistake. Shouldn't have done that. But it was too late. There was no going back. And, you know, then every day, I was going into the commons area to eat dinner, and the cross team always sat together. And for some reason, all these motherfuckers looked exactly the same. And I was like, maybe that's him. Maybe that's him. But the only time I've seen him is a picture when he was really young in Kane's book, and then just some stuff on Facebook. I didn't stalk him too much on Facebook. I realized that was a little too much. I didn't do that. I didn't want to be that big of a creep. So I didn't know exactly what he looked like. Just basic features, right? And all these lacrosse kids look the same. The same haircut, the same like facial structure. I don't get it. All lacrosse kids look the same. It was weird. I didn't know many of them. I only knew the football guys. But I was also in a fraternity called Sigma Chi, where a lot of the lacrosse dudes were in that fraternity. One of them, unfortunately, wasn't Jace. I wish it was. That would have made this a lot easier on me. But a lot of guys knew that I was big into horror films, specifically my big brother in the fraternity. And he's like, well, I can talk to him, make a connection. And he did just that. He told Jace that, hey, there's someone that knows your dad really well and is a big fan and would like to meet you and talk to you. And then Jace added me back on Facebook. I didn't want to message him unless I had a legitimate reason to do so. And I was in a lot of film classes. And one of my projects was to recreate some sort of series you've seen, whether that's online or in film, whatever. So I decided to recreate Adam Green's Scary Sleepover, which if you've seen it on Ariscope, which if you haven't, you probably should, but the first episode ever is with Kane, and Kane's the first guest star on that show. So I made the choice to message him, and I pitched this idea where, hey, I know your dad. I know he was on Scary Sleepover. I think it'd be cool if we recreated it, but you are the guest instead. And that happened, and we did it. It was stupid, but he totally bought in. He liked it. He had a good time with it, and we asked him a bunch of questions about his dad and what his life was growing up and how interesting it was. And he was really cool about it. He was super humble. He's obviously raised extremely well, and I give a lot of respect to the Hodder family for that. I mean, they were just great kids. And one of the things I respected about Jay so much was the fact that he didn't want to be successful because of who his dad's name was. He went out, he earned a proper degree that had nothing to do with film, despite having interest in the stunt industry. And today is doing extremely well for himself. Both Kane's sons, Reed and Jace, are doing extremely well. And that a lot of that has to do with how they were brought up. So I respect the hell out of that. I then did another interview separately with Jace and did like a documentary on Kane's life. I didn't have much resources to work with because the only person I could interview for it was Jace. And really it was just thrown together to get a quick grade. Got an A on it, but that's not the point. So it wasn't doing anything too crazy. But when doing the interview, I got to know Jace a lot better. And he told me that he would tell his dad that he'd introduce me to him and we'd make this connection, and Kane knew that as well. He was super cool about meeting a fan at school. I think this is the first time that has ever happened. I think a lot of people have met Kane just because of the stories that Jace has told for the lacrosse team, and I'm sure Kane choked a lot of the lacrosse kids, and this is a classic images, but I don't think anyone's ever really truly known who he was and was such a big fan like I was. And then it was finally cross season, and I knew that at some point Kane was going to be on campus and was going to be watching his son play lacrosse. So I'm just trying to plan it right and to know when to show up and then to introduce myself. Like I said, I've never done anything like that before. Today, I'd have no problem. I've had to do that shit so many times, but then I was scared shitless. One of my brothers in my fraternity told me, hey, he's on campus. I saw him today. So you need to show up to the game this weekend and experience it. I can go meet him. It's like, oh, Jesus, like that sounds great and everything, but I'll see what I can do. And one of my best friend's girlfriends goes to all the lacrosse games, and she was like pushing me this whole time to go meet him. And then my girlfriend was with me, and she's trying to encourage me to do it. And we're at the game, and it took me 2 seconds to find him. He's sitting at the top of the bleachers, and it's interesting because it's not the Kane that you would know from conventions, right? Like the Kane that's always wearing some horror-related t-shirt, jeans, like tight jeans and thick-ass black boots, right? And it wasn't that. He was wearing a beanie, a nice Columbia jacket, some loose-fitting jeans, and he was wearing some Nike shoes, which, by the way, I was wearing the exact same shoes that day, so that's worth noting, Great minds think alike. But then I saw him, I found him, and I was like, nope, can't do it. I'm scared shitless, can't do it. Did not want to bother him during the game. He's watching his son play. It felt wrong to go sit by him and bother him, right? So I decided not to, and I sat there in the front row as he sat in the back, and he had 2 people with him. I couldn't tell if that was, at the time, if that was his wife and his other son. It was just too much going on. Finally, at the end of the game, I was like, man, I'm actually going to throw away this opportunity to go meet this guy, a guy I've looked up to my entire life. Like, grow a fucking pair, Riley, go talk to him. And we're in the lobby, and we have this really nice lobby at our stadium, and I see him walking around there, and he knew the entire time that I was his fan. Like, he could tell. We would make eye contact, and like, you could just, I probably had this little petty, my cheeks were probably all red, I probably looked like a scared little kid. So he knew the entire time. And I knew that he knew, so I'm like, God, I gotta do this or I'm gonna look like a bitch. I'm like, come on, Riley, you could do this. Just go talk to him. And he steps outside the door to get some fresh air. The guy gets hot really fast because of his scars. He steps out to get some fresh air, and I finally, before he walked out and closed the door and disappeared, I just said, Mr. Hodder, hey, I'm a big fan, just wanted to introduce myself. And he's like, God, I've been waiting for you. You should have came and talked to me this whole time. I saw you were, I could tell you were a fan. I was like, I was too scared. I wanted to, but I I couldn't do it. It was scary out there. But then he was super nice, and you know, one of the things I'm actually like kind of proud to say, the first time I met him, I shook his hand, his bare hand, which doesn't happen often. Now, I mean, now it's different. I've known him for so long, but yeah, he just shook my hand with his bare hand, and that was kind of neat because I know he's not really into that. I read his book, I knew, and yeah, we had a really neat conversation. We dove into his history and how I was a fan, and I still every once in a while the story comes up about how I wrote that letter to New Line. And he's just a super, super nice guy. And it was so amazing to me is that everybody around had no idea who he was. These people are standing next to a fucking legend in the horror industry and just had no idea that they're standing next to an iconic figure who they've probably seen before. They've probably seen his exact pictures from the Manhattan pictures and Part 7 ones. They're everywhere. And I'm sure that these people have seen those films, or at least seen pictures of them, and had no idea that they were standing next to him. It's pretty crazy. That opportunity came, I got to build a relationship with him, and he gave me his email at the game. And I've stayed in contact ever since. I still try to stay in contact with Jace, just because he's such a good guy, and he has such a crazy story to tell on his own. But Kane told me that if I ever needed to get into a convention, just let him know, and he'll get me tickets. That was first of all, that was an incredible offer, and it's still amazing to think that Kane offers something so generous to just some random fan that, you know, just went to school with his son. But he made that offer, and I didn't accept the offer, but I was like, man, I really do need to start going to conventions. Like, I wanted to my whole life, and now it's not about asking your parents for permission. I was 19 years old, and if I had the money, it was my choice now. So he was going to Texas Frightmare, one of the biggest cons in the country, at an incredible convention, by the way. I recommend it, especially if you're in that area. You're missing out if you're not going to Texas Frightmare every year, because it's incredible. It's still the best convention I've ever been to. It's amazing. I didn't ask him for tickets because it didn't feel right. It just kind of felt, you know, taking advantage of that opportunity that was given to me. So I didn't. And I was like, I just told him, hey, I'm going to be there. It'd be cool if you know, we got to talk while I was there. So I drove, I'm from Northern Illinois. I drove 12 and a half hours south with my girlfriend to the convention. And he was unbelievably cool as hell. He would always let us skip his line, which I still struggle to take advantage of. It just doesn't feel right. It makes me feel bad, but he yells at me if I don't. And he would introduce me to everybody. He introduced me to Tony Todd, which was amazing. And again, this is a first-time thing for me, so it was insane. So he introduced me to Tony Todd. He introduced me to Robert Englund, and it was just amazing. We sat down, had dinner one of the nights, and he's just been so cool ever since. And now, I mean, he's a friend of mine, and it's weird. It's crazy to say that. And it still remains surreal when I step back and think about it, that I can call Kane Hodder a friend. And because of him, I've made more friends. He has like this group, collected people that he has friends with. And I met some amazing people like Kelly and Myra, who you guys don't know, but just Kelly, Myra, Peter Anthony, like these amazing people I've gotten to meet because of Kane, even including, you know, Kane's best friend, Steve Knapp, who they grew up together in Kwajalein. I mean, even knowing Steve is amazing. He's given me a ton of opportunities. This all happened simply because I was recruited to play football at some small Midwest college. I mean, it's insane. Out of all the colleges I could have picked, the fact that I picked the one where his son went is insane. And, you know, looking back, it probably looks like it was on purpose. And I swear to God, I had no idea. That was completely crazy. And now, even to this day, I still go to conventions where Kane's at. I just did an interview with him recently for a project I'm working on, and it's amazing. He still helps us out all the time. It's still unbelievably cool. Still provides free autographs. I've never paid for an autograph from Kane. He's helped us with charity events. He helped share our Kickstarter for reviving Camp Blood. He called in for our 1-year anniversary of Slash and Cast and said congratulations. I mean, the guy has done so much for us, and he had no reason to. Nothing was really making him a better. Like, there's nothing that was really benefiting him other than just being a good guy. And then, again, all because I went to school with the sun. It's insane. But let me know your thoughts, Constable. It pretty much sums up my story. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I'll happily reply as we go in the comments. But have you ever met a horror icon that just kind of changed your life forever? Let me know. I'd love to hear your stories. And let me know what you think of this series. I have a lot more stories to tell from all these conventions that I've gone to. Some really funny ones, some really crazy ones, including almost getting in a fight with somebody cosplaying as Leatherface. Just things like that. Exciting things in that horror community and family. And I have a lot of fun sharing them. So let me know your thoughts, and let's see if we keep this series going. But with that, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. And of course, as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.